You're welcome back to the Policy Council. My name is Okwemi Agbaje. My guest for the past edition has been Mr. Fola Athawari, Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. Together we've tried to understand the rationale for the formation of a trust fund and its structure and operations and the kind of interventions it has been making in the security sector in Lagos State. Today we'll go beyond that and understand some of the more controversial issues, its sources of funding, some statements that have been made in relation to the fund. I'll get Mr. Athawari's reaction. And then the issue of state police. Is this trust fund a final remedy to properly establishing policing across the country? So, Mr. Athawari, you're welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, now let me ask you, typically, who have been the donors to the fund?
Okay.
What are the main sources of funding that you've got?
As I said, what the state government contributes, and the fund takes the view that anything the state government expends on security will be listed in its audit structure because they're effectively a contribution to the fund. So the state government provides the vehicles for the rapid response squad, provides fueling and other equipment. The private sector and private individuals is a combination of vehicles or radio equipment or cash. Now, our main cash donors have been the banks, and when I say the banks, not every bank. Some banks 1 year on, 1 year off, and where you have financial crisis, like in 2009, you're going to get a drop. And that's the danger of thinking that the trust fund is a solution, final solution. Like you said, you used the word, I think the most appropriate word when you said intervention. It's really an intervention fund. Okay. So the banks...
The banks are the biggest
The banks
donors.
are the biggest.
And you have the representatives?
No, the banks are not the biggest donors.
Okay.
But they are consistent donors.
Okay.
The three we have on the board have been consistent donors, First Bank, Sky, and Zenith. And I'm very proud that we've been able to bring them in and retain them on the board. We have a very unique model in that regard. You've got companies like Dangote, you've got UAC, you've got Coca-Cola, you've got breweries who recently, you've got MTN. In fact, MTN is a major contributor. And you have, to a lesser extent, Airtel. You've got many, Leadway. There are so many companies. If you go into our website, you will see a list of donors.
And let me ask you, because these people are donating. It's not a very usual thing in Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
For large multinationals, with corporate governments, with structures, and donating to an entity associated with
governments. And that's critical. And that's why I think it is the establishment of trust over time. And that auditing, that audit report has been critical. And of course the visible, the town hall, the visible impact, the reports we give every year. The Commissioner of Police addresses the body. They can see that effort, that it's about the effort you make. It's about your response. There'll be crime. The world has become...
Let me mention something which you'll be happy about. I was at a dinner sponsored by the fund in which the representative of First Bank mentioned that before the fund, they were having armed robberies and branches, and they were closing branches. But that since the fund came into operation, they had not suffered one
a single
attack in Lagos. Whereas it has continued in other states.
Yes. But first credit for that goes to the police, because you need a policeman to respond. And then, of course...
but you need a policeman who can
exactly. And who is protected, who is protected, you know, by the APC and all of that. Other donors, churches have donated, associations, the cab drivers association have donated, school children have donated, the fast food association have donated. In fact, we have probably the widest donor base of any entity in Nigeria. And like you said, many of the problems of Nigeria are based on trust deficit. But the trust fund has been able to a large degree,
and sustain that trust, so that these people continue to donate,
year on year.
And then you have new donors.
But breweries is a new donor. So if 5 years after, we still bring in, that means that gradually we're cementing the trust.
Let me challenge you, though. I had a statement, and I'm going to mention the sources. I had a statement, or I read a statement from the state's PDP, in which they alleged that your fund, they linked it with
graft.
With graft,
and
with corruption. And now, if you were going to dismiss them as opposition politicians, I read a recent statement by the Speaker of the House of Assembly, who is part of the Lagos State government, in which he called on the governor to examine fund utilization on the transfer. That he was suggesting something.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the problems of Nigeria is that people, a lot of the time, people make uninformed comments, even when there is material from which they can inform themselves before they, and because we have an impressionable public, sometimes these uninformed statements have unintended or intended consequences. You brought in the PDP. I don't like to get into politics, but I think it would be wise for the PDP to examine its own record at the federal level as to why, first of all, we need a trust fund. You know, the need for a trust fund is an indication of a failure by the PDP government. Anybody who wants to know about our structure, spending, etc., only needs to go online and find out. We publish our audit and so on. So I don't think that it's an issue worth spending a lot of time on, because it would just be they say, we say. We say that if even after those comments, a major company is giving us 25 patrol vehicles.
How do you estimate the cost of 25 patrol vehicles?
And they are equipped
with communication
about 150 million.
Wow.
That's
MTN.
And that's MTN. So, so I don't want to, obviously they're trying to score political points, and I really don't think it is important. I think we should just focus on the challenges of Nigeria. As Nigeria's security architecture is stressed by Boko Haram, by oil theft in the Niger Delta, etc., all manner of kidnapping. There's always going to be, flux, and people are going to move, and people will identify new targets. And so we have to be prepared to address the problem. If PDP has an alternative, to the trust fund, then they should.
But let me. We can dismiss PDP as.
No, I'm not dismissing them,
but not your own speaker. Due respect.
Well, I didn't really read his statement, but I'm surprised because they passed the law, and they visited a House committee visited the fund, I think in October, and commended us. And the Speaker has never attended any of the town hall
okay, that may
meetings,
be why
which is maybe why he does not. He's not up to date on. And the idea that he should check the funding presumes that the Speaker somehow is aware that we are either sitting on huge amounts of money, but we're not, because any money that comes in goes out, because the business of security is a constant business. Listen. 2 police vehicles responding to new vehicles which were given to them by the fund, responding at Penn Cinema to a distress call, had the vehicles riddled by AK-47 bullets. They lost two policemen in that situation. Those vehicles were off-roaded. Now, there's no system within the police at all for maintenance or replacement. The Lagos State government, as a government, does not have an agency or a unit that deals with that. It was the trust fund that intervened and comprehensively repaired these vehicles and returned them.
And the APC that was destroyed at
C-Regal Estate hit 62 times.
62
times by AK-47 bullets. They dislodged the robbers, but the vehicle was disabled, tires shattered and all. It would have just been parked and left. It was the trust fund. We went as far as Canada to look for the component parts of replacement, and now it has been recycled back into service. So I don't want to engage.
Let me understand your internal structure as a fund. How many staff do you have? How much of the resources list do you spend yourself?
Well, I would describe us as lean and mean. We have myself as the CEO. I have an administrative manager. I have an accountant. I have an office manager, and then an intern, somebody who from outside come in to learn some accounting skills, and that's it. Anything else we need to do beyond that, we outsource.
That's 5 people.
5 people. And we basically spend 300,000 on running costs, which includes petrol in a month. I'm not entitled to spend donors' money without regard to their expectations. And I've headed ministries, and you know, I'm used to big, but this time I say after retirement I don't want too many. And you know, we run it, there are instruments.
Let me ask you a question. Why did you accept to come and run this?
I love challenges, and I used to be a prosecutor. I've known the police for a very long time. I've always sympathized with, you know, the problems that they have, but these problems have been compounded since the return of democracy, which is strange. You would think that democratic systems would better understand the importance of the police as an institution of civil, you know, law enforcement. So I'd retired. I'd, you know, gone back to my chambers, was trying to make a little money, and the governor said, come and run this thing. There's no precedent to it, but we think, you know, with a bit of imagination we can. And I was challenged. And I came in and I have discovered the depth of the rot and the scandalously casual approach that a nation adopts towards policing at a time when, you know, we are challenged. In every, you know, there's financial fraud, there's corruption, there's people used to say that, oh, Nigerians love life too much to blow themselves up. I said, where are these people living?
We're blowing ourselves up.
Well, of course. You know, and so on and so forth.
Let's take a final time out, and I'll be back with Mr. Athawari.
My name is Onyema Kinzago. I live in Lagos, where things are getting better every day.
Our school has just been renovated,
and they give us free notebooks too. Going to school is easier and safer for students like me because I can cross the highway using the footbridge, and I use the BRT bus, which is fast, convenient, and free for students like me. I enjoy looking at the beautiful streets on my way to school, and the many street signs tell me where exactly I am. When I get to Basic 12, the government will pay the fees for my GCE and NECO examinations. I am happy. My mom and dad says all these good things are happening because they pay their taxes. I hope to pay my taxes when I grow up and start working. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back to the Policy Council. I'm still talking funding security in Lagos State with Mr. Fola Athawari, Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. Mr. Athawari, let's focus on the governor. From your account, he conceptualized this. What else has he done? What's his role in this matter?
I will first of all call him the chief advocate of acceptance and contribution to the fund. He addressed the private sector in 2007 in the first town hall meeting, even though before the inauguration of the board. But that was the critical meeting where he put to them what the actual problems were, etc. And he has remained consistently the face, as it were, of the fund at the 6 town hall meetings that we've held. He has never delegated that responsibility. He's always been there to address. Again, and the Lagos State strategic response to insecurity, crime is formulated at the State Security Council level, of which I'm a member. I represent the fund on that so that we can, I can bring back to the fund you know, a clearer understanding of what the challenges are. And he has chaired this council meeting every month without fail since 2007. Every month without fail. So I think that he's probably the fund's strongest brand, if you like, in terms of you know, that level of commitment and the level of if you like,
And I must say,
accountability.
even though I'm an interested party, I must say that he has taken great care in nominating the members
Yes.
of the fund. Indeed, in choosing the CEO of the fund, in
Well,
yourself.
well, thank you for
and then
that.
the other board, because I see
Yeah.
a particular care
in the choice.
in the choice of
knowing
members.
that, I mean, these are board members that do not make any financial demands of the
What do
fund.
you pay your board members?
Well, it's supposed to be 50,000 a sitting, but a number have
Waived.
said that they waive it and that we should see it as contributions to the fund.
50,000
50,000 a sitting.
for a board sitting?
Yeah, for a board
And you
sitting.
do about three, or
no,
four a
five,
year?
5 to 6 minimum, you know.
So
5
a
to 6.
typical board member who collects the money earns
it's
300,000.
300K. So it's really not about that. It's about you know, that level of commitment. And you know, I think also what is important is the autonomy that the board exercises. So we are not part of government bureaucracy, nor do we take directives from anybody in government. And with all due respect to His Excellency, he does not make he doesn't give directives, he makes requests. But of course, once it comes from His Excellency, of course the board will give it because they know it's based on, you know,
On the knowledge
on
of
the
the
knowledge
needs
of
the
what
state.
of the needs.
Let's have it, because we can't avoid a discussion on. You see, the picture you painted on why we needed this trust fund, doesn't that picture also tell us why we need state police? And in fact, doesn't your fund itself tell us why we need state police?
You know, for me, I think the critical thing we need to look at is how to get the most efficient police force, whether it's federal or state. The argument that, oh, as a federal system, each state should have, you know, is academic. It doesn't address the fundamentals, because it presupposes that every state, for instance, would be able to effectively run a police force. That every state would effectively be able to keep its police force non-partisan. That some states will not end up having religious police. That some would not end up having indigent police. So there are a number of issues. And many states have shown their inability to run education or anything. So I look at, I believe we wouldn't be having the debate if the federal government discharged its obligation properly and did not rely on what is effectively subsidy from the states.
On one hand, it denies the state police, and then it now
is a beneficiary of, in fact, it runs its police on state input.
Indeed, we can say it abdicates.
Yeah, it has abdicated, and indeed we can say that the states are subsidizing what is effectively a federal responsibility. Now, if we want, there are two answers. If we want the states to continue funding the national police, then we need to adjust the revenue allocation formula. Because the federal police raises fundamental issues of responsibility and accountability, about the level of funding, about capacity. I agree, you could have state contingents, right? I mean, state police contingents, but some level perhaps of federal oversight. You know, it has to be robustly thought about, because we saw a state in the southeast. We sent all non-indigents out of its public service. So we have to be careful about, and in a place like Lagos, I mean, you've got to recruit people from every community, because we're talking about policing ourselves. So in a large Hausa community in Lagos, if you are applying a state police solution, you'd want the people policing it to be from that community, to be Hausa speaking, and they'll also have to be Yoruba speaking or English speaking. So I think it's very complicated, but will every state be able to fund its police properly, etc., etc.? I think that yes, ultimately for accountability, political accountability, we need state police. We need state police because this continuing recognition of non-state actors, even by laws, vigilantes. A state passes a law. Even Lagos is even better, because Lagos has never formally acknowledged any relationship with OPC. But in some states, they legislate vigilante into being. Now, the word vigilante means a non-judicial body of people who take over responsibility for law and order in the absence of state ability.
Let me ask you, is Hisbah not state police?
In a sense,
is what the Sharia state
yes, in a sense. So you can see some danger there, you know. In a sense it is. But the creation of all these agencies is an indication of the failure of the constitutional structure to address this law and order. So for me, I think what we should be looking at is management and efficiency. We should be looking at outcomes. How do we best get law and order in place? Before 1999, before 1990, through the 70s, through the 80s, there was no debate about state police. Because it was just basically more effective. And there were less of these multiple agencies drawing the core away from the FRSC. They have not improved safety on the roads. Civil defense, nobody's clear as to their mandate. What's the other one? You've got EFCC, ICPC. Corruption has in no way reduced. I think these are essentially police functions. Let's strengthen the units, and you know, then probably the debate about state police is. I am not enamored of state police as a solution. Yes, it's good as a federal structure, but I'm not sure that it's a solution. I'm not sure we're going to get quality policing merely because we do state police. I think we need a more robust.
Let me close this by asking, what lessons have you learned? I know many states have come to you
definitely
and set up similar structures.
They have.
What lessons have you learned? What recommendations would you make?
Now, on
funding,
fine. The trust fund is not a solution. What we need to do is to confront the reality that we cannot run a police system that is effective and efficient on this shoestring budget. I would advocate that we collapse all the multiple agencies back into the police. I would advocate that we streamline the numbers. I think that we have too many. You know, it's not about numbers, it's about quality. There was an
resources.
And yes, and
mobility,
then how do you resource? Because
telecommunications, training.
At current
forensics.
That's right. In fact, I just got a letter of request from one of the special agencies for support for forensics, and I'm like, that's not what my donors are thinking about. You see, we tend to think that changing names somehow, we had NEPA, then we changed it to PHCN, no change. We've done our HSC to WAEC to 634 something.
441. We have just added 1.
We just all we do, we change NDDC from UMPADEC and all. It's a frivolous approach to governance. We've calculated that with 370,000 men, the budget for overheads breaks down to 21,000 naira per man per year.
Wow.
I mean, that is just ridiculous. And it means nobody is doing the hard budgetary sums. I think the National Assembly needs to justify its huge pay. You know, that 189, if true, which is huge, they need to justify it by doing a bit more work. You know, we're not demanding enough of those charged with certain responsibilities. They cannot say that there isn't the money. Because if the government, right, had 84 billion to give to INEC in one swoop, extra budgetary funds, then they surely have some money to give to the police. We can understand the INEC thing. INEC was going to determine the outcomes of power. So you know, we need to focus on what the important things are. So so the funding matrix at the federal level must be addressed fundamentally. Now, the issue of trust funds. Yes, many states have come to us. I was in Ekiti last week to discuss with them how to set it up. About 11 states, Kwara, Anambra, Oyo, Ogun. But the problem is, they are all going to be going to the same donors. So you are going to stretch the donor system. Even the wealthy in those states are invariably based in Lagos. So while we are going after them, they will. That's why I said it's not an answer. It's useful as an intervention. Even if you had a trust fund that said our job is just to maintain and replace assets as they go down. So there are models, and they can't all be the same. But long term, with the vicissitudes of economics and donor fatigue and all manner of things, I don't see it as a long-term solution. It's a useful answer. The main thing
is to fund the police.
Is for
the federal government.
The Minister of Economic, coordinating minister, to understand that no enterprise will work if you don't have law and order in place. And that's why we are low down on favored investor destinations in Nigeria. Yes, we keep talking about the 160 million people market, but that's not the fundamental. The fundamental is, what is your law and order structure like? And we must make the sacrifices of funding the police properly. All other things, in my view, will follow.
Mr. Athawari, thank you for coming again to the
pleasure.
Policy Council. We'll be right back. I've had the privilege of serving on the Board of Trustees of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. And even if I say so, I think the Governor of Lagos State has taken exceptional care in creating an agency, a unique agency, peopled by people, persons of high integrity. In my view, it's a model of transparency and accountability in Nigeria. However, intervention funds are not the final solution. As my guest has said, the government at the federal level and at the states must decide on the structure they want for policing in Nigeria. And the emphasis must be on efficiency. And then they must properly resource that structure on a sustainable basis. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.